2040 fund is going to hold a lot of stock because your 2040 date is when you plan to retire. That's what that's meaning. A retirement date fund is in 2040, I'm going to retire.
Every Saturday morning, we feature a program here on 99.9 The Big Dog and WVLC.com, Retirement Matters with Dale Smothers. And this morning, Dale stops by the Big Dog studio to talk about finances, retirement, and turning around people's lives.
Sure. Yes, sir. Larry, how you been?
Good. And with the weather, it makes it even better.
No kidding.
It really,
beautiful
really
weather,
does.
Which is funny because we've had a lot of beautiful weather in the market through financial winter. We talked a lot about leading up to October, it being a normally historic bad month for the market. It has been nothing but good, sunshiny days this financial winter. The market continues to climb, hitting all-time highs day after day, it feels. The NASDAQ closed yesterday with an all-time high. We're just a few percentage points away from the S&P being at all-time highs. Incredible performance in the market to this point. Year to date, we've had phenomenal go at things in the market. So that's always a good thing.
I told someone just yesterday that my 401k has performed very well in the past year and a half. And then they told me that they've lost money. How is that?
Yeah, so it really depends on where you've been invested. This is a very good question, and a lot of people are probably facing this. Dale, here you talk about all-time highs, but my market, hasn't been doing very well. It's likely because we've been invested in things like international stocks, which haven't climbed back, things like perhaps even consumer discretionary goods that haven't quite climbed back. You really see diversified portfolios not performing as well because the S&P 500 has been bid up by technology-based stocks. So the Dow Jones Industrial has kind of been flat compared to the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ because the NASDAQ is technology-based. You think about the S&P 500, which is what we kind of judge the market by, is to say if the S&P is doing well, the market's doing well. A lot of people in their 401k have maybe put their money into what we call a target date fund. So if you see a 2025 or a 2040 number, like anything in between those two things on the end of your mutual fund that you're in a 401k, it may be a good idea to maybe go into that. Of course, we would be happy to help you, but you can go into that and build a very similar style of risk portfolio, meaning, a 2040, just a little bit of word of wisdom here, a 2040 fund is going to hold a lot of stock because your 2040 date is when you plan to retire. That's what that's meaning. A retirement date fund is in 2040, I'm going to retire. So we have a lot of time. We're going to hold a lot of stocks. We're going to hold very few bonds. If you have a 2025 fund in your 401k, you're likely holding a lot of bonds. And again, bonds are not going to perform anywhere close to what the S&P 500 has done.
True. Which
is why your friend may have told you, well, mine's not done that well. Even with contributions, we've seen a lot of 401ks not climb back because they're not invested as aggressively as they could be.
Well, my best advice would be talk to your investor and just find out why you're not making money.
That's exactly right.
Get this shifted around.
Exactly. And, making a call to our team, 270-600-PLANS, one way to make that happen. That's a way to start this conversation, is to look at your 401k.
Because if anybody out there is not making money, then you're missing the boat. This is the perfect opportunity.
That's right.
Yeah, just like yesterday, NASDAQ closed at a record high.
That's exactly right. And, my fear is that people who have maybe missed the boat, they maybe jump after the boat and they end up getting wet in the water, right? This is what we don't want to do. We don't want to chase returns. So moving now may or may not be the best thing depending on where you are in your journey. If you still got 10 to 15 years, I think moving to a more aggressive portfolio
But it's worth discussing.
It's very much worth discussing. 2025 is now becoming in scope for us. Looking at 2025, we've got a lot of things that are going to clear up for us. The election's hopefully going to be behind us before January of 2025. Hopefully we know who the president is at that point in time. And then we've got an FMOC, which is a Fed meeting. The FMOC meets on the 6th and 7th of November. So right after the election, we have a Fed decision on whether or not they raise or cut or keep rates the same. Now, there's a lot of people saying they're going to cut rates. But Larry, I'm going to tell you, the labor market is very, very strong. We just had an ADP report come out this morning around 8:15 that shows the labor market continues to be resilient in spite of what the Fed sees as coming recession. So with the labor market strong, I do not expect a very steep rate cut, if any cut at all. this is a shift from what they've said. They've said they're going to cut. I would very much caution against planning on a cut. Now, the market has already priced in the cut. So, in other words, if you're going to the stock market expecting a Fed cut and you say, I'm going to buy now because if the Fed cuts, the market goes up, which is historically what happens,
right?
Be cautious. Don't make any decisions based off of what the Fed does just yet. And with that point, in 2025, if the Fed continues to cut in spite of a strong labor market, couple that with a spending deficit that's likely to come from either administration, you are likely to see inflation start to rear its ugly head. And that's something we have to keep in our scope if we're planning for retirement anytime in the near future. So if you are interested in talking to us, give us a call, 270-600-PLAN. But more than anything, tune into the show here on The Big Dog. Make sure you're listening to the Retirement Matters show. If you catch any show every Saturday morning, by all means, make sure that you tune in, ask questions, send us questions that you have. If you miss a show, catch us on our podcast streaming service of your choice, The Retirement Matters Show with Dale Smothers.
There he is. Retirement Matters every Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, right here, just after the 9 o'clock news. That is Dale Smothers joining us in the studio this morning, right here on The Big Dog. It's 8:53, 7:53 Central. We'll announce their birthday winner coming up in a moment on The Big Dog.